I'm here today with Ben from Glide. Say hello, Ben.
Hi, Simon.
Hello. And today we're going to be talking about how Glide can give you complete visibility of all of your actions and jobs within your accountancy practice. Let's get started. Can I, hopefully, fingers crossed, this is where Ben turns his camera on and his microphone on, and here we go. Hey!
Morning, Simon.
And we've got no internet problems. Good morning again, Ben. So without further ado, if I could hand over to you, Ben, for you to share the demonstration this morning of how Glide works. And as I say, if we've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A box and I will gladly answer them. So we'll begin, Ben, with a virtual round of applause. Go.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Simon, and thanks for inviting me to do the demonstration today. So just going to get my screen share up and running. Okay, so I think we've got about 30 minutes here just to give a very sort of brief overview of the software, go through the key things it can do for accounting practices. Before I start that, I just want to give a very brief sort of background on the company. So myself and my colleagues all come out of a sort of practice background, and Glide actually started trading back in January 2010. So for quite a long time now, we've been helping practices with predominantly with their workflow management, and in the past sort of 5 or 6 years with a sort of broader range of practice management tools as well. Okay, so the reason we started the business and what remains today our sort of core objective is to give accountants in practice just absolute crystal clear and completely reliable information about where the progress of their jobs are at, what they need to be focusing on today, this week, this month. We had sort of personally found, having used a lot of tools, that everything had a go at this, but they all felt short. They all sort of needed spreadsheet discussions, etc. And there was simply sort of too much confusion, if you like, in the practice. This should be easy, and what we've achieved is hopefully to make it easy. So what I'm going to do today is walk through an example job. I'm just going to pick a VAT return as being something nice and not too simple, not too complicated, and hopefully I'll sort of convey to everyone watching today the sort of main mechanism in Glide. One thing to bear in mind is that we've gone very heavily down the sort of configurable tool route. You can very much use Glide to map your processes, how your business works. So we do start off with templates, but it's very much about personalizing those to you. So don't worry too much with my choice of terminology, stages, etc. That's all sort of highly configurable. Okay, so I'm looking here at a dashboard. Just to introduce these briefly, dashboards are an important part of Glide, and the habit I like people to get into is just to sort of get to the desk in the morning, load up the dashboard. They should really be doing two things. Firstly, answering any obvious questions, what VATs have we got to finish this month, what payrolls we're doing this week, etc. But far more importantly, in my opinion, they should be proactively bringing to your attention jobs, year ends, whatever type of work it is, nicely ahead of the point where you need to be doing something, in order to be delivering sort of a proactive service before your client sort of starts approaching you about it. So whether that's a year end popping up 30 or so days before the year end to remind you to make a call, or whatever it is, that's the second job of the dashboards. If you have multiple team members, dashboards are a personal thing. Each user creates as many as they require, names them how they like, puts appropriate widgets on for their role. But very much the data is what I'd say sort of global. So the whole idea here is that everyone in the practice has this, if they want it, the same view over the progression of these jobs. The philosophy was very much, let's sort of share this responsibility for delivering client service sort of consistently. Of course, you can filter it down to sort of your jobs, your clients, your list as required. Okay, so I'm just going to refresh here, check on up to date. Yeah, I thought I had a job there. So I'm gonna go into my second tab actually, and just pick on this VAT job. And this is going to be my example today that I'm going to walk through. And straight away, just to sort of draw your attention to the most important bit of information on the job card, that would be the text here. The text here and these blue buttons are really the key things about Glide. To request books and records, that is our current stage. So Glide at all times knows exactly what stage every job is on. And at this moment, I just want to introduce, on my third tab I've got here, the sort of configuration area. So this is sort of, if you like, behind the scenes. This is what a workflow looks like to Glide. I think it's fair to say one of the questions coming in advance of the webinar is what makes us different. And I think the crucial answer to that is our process-based method for managing sort of workflow. So every job, has one of these sat behind it. Now, just to explain what we're seeing here, what do they have in common? Well, every workflow has a moment of job creation, which of course, thinking about those recurring flows, that's fully automated and nothing will get in the way of that, which I find is crucial to getting the trust that people need to have in the system to avoid them having another spreadsheet in the background. Just going to scroll down. Okay, I'll try and go slowly because I know the screen share sometimes is a bit behind, but the other thing we have in common across all workflows is, of course, that at some point they get completed, the green square there. What happens in between there is it's just a blank canvas for you to document and design your processes with a proper sort of process methodology. Of course, we do have a template bank, and more often than not, practices that come to use Glide will take a load of our templates and tweak them. You don't have to. If you're really keen to just get on with it with minimal effort, you can do. But I really think the value here for the practitioner is to make this relevant to you and your practice. So I've probably worked with sort of 300 accounting practices, and regardless of size, I don't think I've found any two that sort of do things in exactly the same way. So what I want to do is link what we're seeing here to our job card and our dashboard. So our example job has created to run the creation step, and it's sat on the stage to request books and records. The blue things on this screen are my stages. So at any one time, every job that exists, so has been created, hasn't been finished, will be on one of these stages. So let's just jump back to the job card. That, of course, is the text right there. And if we look at our dashboard, there's loads of widgets, but still the firm favorite in my opinion. Well, I've got sort of a typical layout that takes 3 views on the data, but I think the core component there is the progress monitor. So this is listing my stages. That's the one that my job is on there. So I am that one job, and it's showing you exactly where they are. So the key sort of mindset we're getting into here is that anyone in the practice, no matter where they are in the world, can see exactly what's going on. Okay, next really important thing to...
So Ben, just I've got a couple of questions that come in. If you just go back to that previous tab, do you have different dashboards for different job types? So would there be a VAT dashboard, a bookkeeping dashboard, an accounts dashboard? Is that...
Right, yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of up to the user. So each user of the system can have as many dashboards as they need. Some people will go for like an overall summary. So all of these widgets can be pulling in all of your jobs. So like this would be all jobs I'm holding, all of our targets. But I find on average, people will have 3 or 4 dashboards. And the 2 popular approaches there are to do a service-specific dashboard like my VAT dash, or maybe a group of services. So this might maybe be expanded to include VAT onboarding, VAT registrations, or related like my monthly work, might be bookkeeping, management accounts, etc. Or some people, and perhaps this is where there's teams using Glide, might go for the approach of a my work dashboard, the office or my team. So it's very much up to you, is the answer to that. But yeah, it's quite common to see people creating a sort of service specific one, or groups of services. On average, people have about 8 to 12 workflows. I think, I've seen it up in the 40s as well when people get really into it. But on average, 8 to 12. I don't think you'd want 12 dashboards. I think that sort of defeats the focus they should bring. But yeah, 4 or 5 dashboards works nicely.
Okay, and then you might be coming on to this, but you've kind of alluded to it in that question. But Damien wants to know, do you allocate the job to a person, or can you allocate the stages of a job to a different person?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to definitely cover an example of this in a moment, but just to answer again, and everything with Glide, this is the answer, it's very configurable. So we have job positions. Let me just open up this tab. So first of all, you create job positions. Now, this might be things like I've got here, manager, preparer. They are whatever you want them to be, and as many as you need. Now, these are the people that are interested in or in some way responsible for this job. And the key thing being in a job position does for you is on your dashboard, you can choose a widget will default to overall. That means I'm seeing everything. In my practice, I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 VAT returns. But if I'm maybe one of 4 people and I've been given a quarter of the client list, I would be on the client card as the sort of either generic client accountant, client manager, or more specific to a service of that person. And I would jump automatically into a job position. So I can then go, right, I actually just want to see mine. I'm going to put this to linked. Okay. Held is what I'm going to come on to. And I think that better answers Damien's question there. So yeah, you can flick this between overall, linked, held. You can have the widget twice. As we were saying before, you could have multiple dashboards. Now, just to make sure I answer that question thoroughly right away, several people can be linked to a job, but only one person is the job holder. And this is what allows us to present, for example, how a to-do list. So back on the dashboard, the jobs held widget, which again can be overall, can be service specific. That is the jobs that the system thinks you are the person that should be pushing forward with the current stage of the job. And of course, I think this is what Damien's alluding to, that can change. Maybe for some jobs it won't. Maybe for management accounts, someone does it, they've done. But it's a big part of the Glide system to recognize that, yes, in a far more complicated example, maybe a year-end flow for a big client, you might have the sort of director or manager wanting to make that early contact to look all proactive, might then jump to an admin team, or this can be people positions or teams or pools to get the info fully in. There might then be an allocation process, and we've got a few different methodologies for allocating. It can be just permanently allocated. It can be ad hoc as you go. It can be a hybrid. It can go into a pool. So loads of things you can do there. Then it might go through reviews. So maybe there's sort of like a review by a more senior member of staff, or maybe even a couple. That all changes automatically, and I'll come on to the mechanism about that. So crucially, on your dashboard, if you've got these set to linked, I don't in my demos, but typically people have these on linked. If you're related to the job, you'll always see it in here, but it's going to be jumping in and out of your jobs held. So like if I've just done it and I've clicked pass it to my manager, it's going to go out of my jobs held onto his or her jobs held, but very much I'm going to retain visibility over it in most other widgets.
Excellent, thank you. And then Steve asked on the bit where you were showing us the workflow, that is certainly different to any that one. That's certainly different from a visualization point of view to anything that I've seen before. Is that a drag and drop? How do you do that? Is this outside the scope of the conversation today, or is it?
No, not at all. Okay. Not at all. Every change you need to make. So first of all, you typically start with a template. But you can just click new system, and this starts with the bare minimum of one state. Then everything you need to do to influence your stages and your steps, which are the visual components we can see here, can be done in here. And the nice thing is it does affect your jobs immediately. So we're on to request books and records. So if I wanted another step here, for example, and these examples I think up on the flyer are always rubbish, but let's say we're ready. Okay, I can just simply add this in, and that might go to ready to start. So I hit save. So that's in there now. And if I come back and refresh my job card, it's straight away there. So an important distinction as well is that we don't sort of create a job, let's copy the workflow. All jobs are looking at the single sort of workflow configuration. Any changes you make are immediately reflected in here.
Brilliant. So a proper process map, a proper visual process map in my language. So excellent.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Simon's asked, I see on the website it integrates with Digita. How integrated is it? And again, if you don't want to answer that now, you want to answer that because you're coming on to that later, then please feel free.
No, it's okay. Yeah, absolutely. We've got these connectors to Digita and to CCH. Those companies aren't quite like your Xero, QuickBooks, Sage Molder providing APIs. This is a slightly more, basically, we connect to the SQL Server, and every 15 minutes we check for new clients or client updates. And it's very much focused on client level data. So for example, unique identifier, client code, client type, client name, any allocations, and core data like phone number, email address, which is useful for our email functionality. But it's not like a modern integration. It's one way because we don't feel it's appropriate to manipulate that data. So it's very much you do your changes in Digita, CCH, they pop into Glide.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, right. So the next most important component here is the blue buttons. I'd go as far as saying these are by a long way the most important thing in Glide. So just to link, we've kind of did this a moment ago, but essentially on each one of your stages here, you of course require a minimum of one way out of the stage to progress. But you can have as many as you like. You know, you can have steps that go to the next stage, or maybe go backwards if you've had a review and you've got review points. They can jump over things if it's appropriate just to some client types. I've got a nice setup here in progress that I'll talk about in a moment. So for every option you've created in your diagram, you'll see a blue button. Now, these are really important to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, we're reflecting reality here. So if you think you're a user, something's happened, most systems will say this stage is done. So the user comes in and ticks the stage or puts a date in the stage. We take it to the next level and allow the user to record exactly what has happened. So really anything that could unfold should be a blue button. It doesn't matter if they're only used once in a while. That means, first of all, with the blue buttons, it's dead easy. You know, you click the button. So this is easy to get people to keep up to date, which has always been important. Secondly, it's precise. So we're not just saying we requested books and records. If we've got multiple options, we're saying exactly what happened. That to me, when I said at the outset about just complete certainty over what's going on, the blue buttons are what gives you that, because you can be so precise in recording what's happened and your flow can, you know, move the job forwards accordingly. Okay, so we've moved on to awaiting books and records. If I just jump back to tab 1 and hit refresh, before I hit refresh, we were that number 1 there. There's 2 in there. So if I hit refresh, we'll see we've gone down to 0 and come up to 3 here. So of course, everyone's seeing these updates as they go. So the blue buttons do a number of things. Of course, they look to see if they need to change the stage. So in my example there, we have slid down this step here. So we've gone from to request books and records to awaiting books and records. They'll put the actual date in. So that is a log of when you've done things. And they'll also potentially trigger actions, which I'm going to come on to in a second. Now, on my awaiting books and records, I've got 2 steps. I've got info chased that goes nowhere, and I've got info received that moves me on. So the chased one, I can click that as often as I like. 2 reasons why you might do that. First of all, you do get multiple actual dates and you can drill in to see what was happening and when. Of course, you can supplement that with comments, should you need to, either on the job card or more specifically on a stage. The second reason why you might do this is that all of these steps can be triggering any number of what we call workflow actions, which I think is perhaps better referred to as automations, things that happen automatically when the button is clicked. We've got about 25 capabilities, so somewhere between 25 and 30 capabilities. And I usually talk through the 4 main ones. I'll do that extremely quickly. So the most utilized automation has been discussed already, change the job holder. So if we click pass for review, it will change the job holder. The second one is target dates, setting those automatically. So when it comes to dates that things should be done by, we have 2 types of dates and we very much separate them. So deadlines are, of course, those derived from legislation, and Glide automatically calculates these when the job creates. They're set in stone. The super user can tweak them if they need to, but shouldn't need to. We can calculate this for, I think, over 80 bits of legislation worldwide. So any sort of obscure services that have a legal deadline, Glide should be able to calculate it for you. Back on the dashboard, a number of our widgets will specifically be referring to deadlines, either in a sort of grid overview or perhaps just in a sort of list format. Target dates, though, are, for me, more important. These are yours. You know, this is about your business, your service level, and when you want things doing by. You can enter them manually, and very occasionally that's necessary. Far better have them completely automated. So either on job creation or whenever you click on any of your blue buttons, you can set or update all these dates. And a bit like the staff allocation, there's tons of logic and conditional logic to make sure it's setting the date how you want it. Broadly speaking, it's days or working days before or after either the job date, the day the button's pressed, a deadline, or a job field. And that's one aspect that can be client specific if you need it to be, occasionally useful for payroll. Okay, other ones, you can send emails. I want to, if we have time, come and look at our email template engine, but these buttons, so the info chased could be chasing the information, and buttons can be pressed in bulk. You know, if you have a first stage on your tax returns, that could trigger that for any number of jobs. Okay, let's just go on. I just want to talk, all right, this is another workflow action, a traffic light. Really important. There's loads of different traffic lights you can bring in to a button. So this traffic light is specifically blocking this button. It's saying, when you click job started, I want to set the job holder as preparer. Currently, we don't have a preparer. Please tell me who it is. And, you know, they're great because a downside I used to find of the systems and spreadsheets is that it's one thing designing them, but then just no one reliably updates it. And unless it's 100% accurate, it's never going to do the job it should do. Okay, right, I'm now on my in progress stage. And this is, I quite like how this is set up now. And I'm slowly adding this to all my templates that, you know, down here, what can happen in progress is that you end up with a big number of jobs in progress. And that just means you have to go back to having phone calls, internal emails, etc., etc. That's always going to be inevitable to a certain extent, but we try and encourage people to deal with the sort of low-hanging fruit just via their workflow. So what I've done here is I've got an optional, you know, you could just shoot past this without doing this, but I've got an optional button, say queries sent to client, optional button, missing info requested. I've seen other people do things like we're waiting on ourselves for dividend info, that sort of thing. You click it, it parks it in a slightly different stage from where you can chase and then resolve. And same with the missing info. So here we might say queries have gone out. Obviously that's moved the job on the dashboard, chased, resolved. And we could then do missing info, received, and then we can move on. Right, so I'm just glancing at the clock and I think I need to.
Yeah, Jonathan says Glide equals absolute game changer. So Jonathan's obviously either a customer or he's seen something this morning that he thinks is a game changer. I've got a couple of questions myself. I'm a big fan of stupid questions, Ben, because generally speaking, stupid questions are easy to answer. So am I right in saying that when you allocated the preparer to, and I can't quite read it, but is it Hannah Dan or Dan Hannah?
Dan, yeah.
Dan, yeah. So when you allocated that to Dan, that will now start appearing on Dan's dashboard. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, absolutely. So Dan, I'd encourage Dan as a member of my team would have the widgets. He'd have them probably set to linked. So this is jumped into all of his widgets that's set to linked. And then when we get to a stage that he should do, it will be in his jobs held as well, which might have been straight away, or it might have waited until the info is ready, etc. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. And then the target date. Obviously, I can see where the actual dates are coming in. What are the target dates set by the system at the start, or could they be dynamic? So say, for example, the job is started on the 10th of March. Can we set up that the completed and passed for review target date is, say, the 13th of March, for argument's sake?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what I encourage here, so these are set by workflow actions. So every button, so if we sort of like what are we on now, we're on awaiting review. So if I find, I have to just scroll down into the actions area, but if we find our awaiting review stage, we've got these two buttons. So, okay, to send to client. What we'd do here is we'd add an action to say, set a target date, working days, for 10 working days from the day the button's clicked for submitted to HMRC. So if we now come back here, I don't think I need to, but I'll just refresh just in case. What okay, I've already got a target date in there, but okay to send to client. That has just updated my target date. So yeah, I definitely encourage set the target dates when the event that sort of informs it has happened. So info is in, set a target date to turn around in 40 working days or whatever. Don't set them out at the start, because then the client's going to hold you up and they're all going to be irrelevant and demotivating. So you could set them out at the start, but much better to have them being triggered to give a realistic and achievable date. So manager has reviewed file, get it to the client in 4 working days. That will always be a future date because it's today plus 4 days. And you know, another thing with target dates, you can either go granular, have them in every stage. You might do what I've done here and just have a couple at key points. So long as there's one target date on the job that hasn't yet been done, the job will always feature in the upcoming targets widget. And what I like about this, a job will only ever appear in there once. If you've got 10 targets, we'll just pick out the most urgent one. And we're sort of league tabling everything in the practice, or in this case, it's specific to VAT, but we're saying, okay, 0 days today, 12 days to do this, 30 days here. So if you've got those target dates, the whole idea is, and this comes back to why we built the software, we weren't missing deadlines, we were getting stuff done, but were we keeping everyone happy with our turnaround and that sort of thing? There's no visibility on it. So instead now, if something's creeping towards the 0, you will see it. If it goes red, it's going to be at the top, hopefully the only thing red up there. So one customer of ours solely has upcoming targets on the dashboard. I mean, I like the sort of quadruple approach of progress, deadlines, targets, and jobs I'm holding. And I put the graph in just to keep everyone happy, because, you know, we need a graph. But yes, so to answer your question, the targets are created typically when you click a blue button, the system will set them automatically. And you can decide for every stage if you want that locked down or user editable, etc.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, right. So I'm going to, on the hour, I think I'm going to move on and look at the email stuff. So just to sort of wrap up here, job fields are a bit like how on a client record you have custom client fields, which obviously we have on our client records. Job fields are the same, except there's a field per job. Great for just recording ad hoc information that isn't part of the flow. A nice example that came up last week was payroll. So a lady in a practice had a spreadsheet, and she asked everyone put in the starters, leavers, carried forward pay slips. And at the end of the month, it was about 50% full. So she'd spend a day filling it out. So what we do now is we have 3 number fields here: starters, leavers, carried forward. And crucially, it's where the traffic lights come in. And I've got an example here. So you can just force people to fill these things in. Another example of that, and the example I'm looking at right now, is sort of what I call mini checklist functionality. So Glide doesn't at the moment really allow you to create your massive A4 checklist. We're not kind of doing that. But there's often 1, 2, 3, maybe up to 10 crucial things that aren't really part of the flow, but you need to know they're done. And my example here is checking we've got the AML covered. Probably a separate flow for doing it, but maybe as part of our year-end work, people will say, right, I want to know that they've checked the AMLs in place. And I'll say, right, where does that go? And often the answer is, well, I don't care, so long as it's done by this point. And you can achieve that by putting a job field in. By default, these are visible at all times. And the user can put a date in there and it initials it, obviously fully logged as well, to say they've done it. And at a certain point in the flow, you say, right, you know, if you've not done that already, you must now confirm the AML is done, and then they're allowed to proceed. Another thing to look at here, you know, the deadlines, you can't just come in and tick off a deadline. We're trying to avoid any possibility for a user to ever just accidentally corrupt our data. So instead, they are linked to progression through a stage. I've got this one linked to submitted HMRC. So that gives it its green tick. That will remove it from our dashboard. You know, the dashboards are very focused on what needs action today, this week, and in the future. The historical stuff you can access through a number of reports and report writers, but that will have taken that off. If we reverse undo, it's going to untick it, you know, that sort of thing. So that's a whirlwind tour of the job card there. Just to very briefly mention a couple of interesting features, I suppose more advanced features, but you can have multiple routes here. So I mentioned before, we have one file here, which is great for making changes, like when I added in the step. if you do have groups of clients where the workflow is just different, you can have different versions. So that works quite nicely. Also, you can have multiple subsystems. This is where within one container of a job, we've got multiple things going on. Some people like to break up accounts and corp tax. My example here today is new client onboarding, where I've actually broken this up into 4. So if you think there's 4 process flows sat behind this job, that they sort of live together, which you could achieve the same with 4 workflow systems. This is obviously a bit tidier, and they can interact with one another. So the emails, which I'm going to look at in a moment, can pull data from all of this. We might block all 3 of these till we've done AML. We might auto progress our corporation tax when the accounts info's in, so they can sort of cooperate with one another a bit better. Okay, that's like the whirlwind tour through the workflow. Of course, the dashboards are the interaction with that. If you're not the person doing things, this is where you sit back and see things progressing or not, as the case may be. I wanted today to also introduce our email and SMS automation tool. This is to explain what this does and doesn't do. Glide's email and SMS is very much focused on outbound emails that are templatable. So if I go to the templates engine, this is, we're not the sort of conversational ad hoc emails. We're not doing those. We're doing things where maybe you're sending these all the time and thinking, I've written basically this 100 times this week. Combination of text and ability to merge in all of your data, client data, recipient. I'll explain the difference in a moment. Any core or custom client fields, job dates, job deadlines, target dates, actual dates fields. You can have links, hyperlinks, and they can be fixed or dynamic, either fully derived from the client record or partially derived from the client record, images, etc. So when can you send these? Your client templates, they just know about your client. You can just send them whenever you like to a client or to a group of clients. The job ones are the clever ones that are going to save the most time, be the most useful. So if we go back to our VAT job card, where is it, this one? So you can trigger these as a workflow action. So either the job creation, I wouldn't recommend job creation, but any of your blue buttons can send, and when I say send on a template by template basis, you choose if that's queuing or sending any number of messages internally or externally. So that's like a progress update message, either to let a user know they have the job, to let a client know that we've filed something or have started reviewing something. So they're good. The alerts, though, are the real sort of, for me, powerful tool because they are fully automated. Once you've set them up, they will fire. So an alert is route specific, and it's triggered by reference either to a job date, a deadline, any stage target date, or any stage actual date. They have an offset. So you might say, if we've got an actual date and books and records requested, and 20 days later, so that's your offset, then they have a filter. If the job is not yet in, so that's relative to stages, send this message. And just to explain it, so loads of examples there where you really can achieve a lot of automation. One of the questions coming in advance, I think, was about saving time. Now, with the workflow, I'm sure people do save time with it, but its main objective is around client service delivery, guaranteeing it happens on time every time. This tool, of course, the alerts, is a time saver, both the time it takes to write the message, but also just remembering to do it, So just to explain the difference between the client tags and the recipient tags, we've got a structure here whereby you link people, either your individual clients or just other contacts. They can be linked to any number of clients, and crucially, you have your own custom tagging structure. So on a sort of non-granular end, you might just have main contacts, say, right, for Ken Gorm, it's James Bond. At the other end of the scale, every single automation might have a tag. In between, you might go for the approach of a tag per service or workflow. This means that a few benefits here. First of all, it guarantees every message is going to a person. So they have a first name and a last name, which you can merge in. It goes to their email or their mobile, not just a generic sort of info at. Secondly, you can get multiple recipients. So you might have 2 people tagged, or 3 or 4 or 5 people tagged as something. They'll all get it. Thirdly, it acts as a filter. So on a simple payroll workflow with one stage and one step and one action to send an email, if it's about CIS, you can make it only go to your CIS clients by applying the tag where required. It gives you the ability to have different versions, which again could be achieved in the workflow, but to keep the workflow simple, you could be automating 2 emails to different tags, and you apply the appropriate tag. Obviously, you have to make sure you only apply the appropriate tag, not both. And it gives, so loads of benefits of that there, really. So yeah, that's the sort of very much whirlwind tour of the email and SMS system. I just want to now allude to a couple of other bits we do that I haven't decided not to focus on today, because I don't think they're totally relevant, but we have I think I've got it open. We've got a scheduling tool. So this is really tends to work well in the practices where their jobs are taking
Sorry, Ben, just before you go on to that, I've got a question on the email. How does the email send? Does it go through Outlook or Gmail, or does it go direct from Glide? How does it physically do it?
Currently, you get 2 choices here. I'll also mention a third choice we're hoping to introduce later in the year. Option 1, which probably accounts for the vast majority of messages we send, are sent by Glide. That's our mail server, and we use SendGrid as our sort of delivery tool. Important to note with that for every template, well, globally, and then on a template by template basis, you choose who it's from. This is obviously the appearance of who it's from, the signature, etc. That might be either a set one, like for payroll, it's payroll at, or it could be dynamically derived from a job position, job holder, client position. So like the VAT manager is sending this email. So that will appear to come from the VAT manager. If they hit reply, it will go to the VAT manager. It's actually come from Glide. And if there are some important settings to do there on your DNS record to make sure it's not appearing as with the sort of via Glide tag that you can get in Gmail and Outlook. Option 2, link it up to your own mail server. Not quite as widely used because it takes Glide out of the loop. You don't get those sort of delivered, opened timestamps, but certainly popular with some of our practices that want every message to go through their mail server. Again, you can still choose dynamically who it's from. You are linking to one address in your server there at the moment, so it's still not literally coming from them, but might deal with some sort of domain issues. We're also looking to introduce more sort of API-based link to Office 365 G Suite, which I think would be great when we've got that. But at the moment, works perfectly nicely for a lot of people. Principally, the Glide sending option, because we have that integration with SendGrid. You can send 3,000, and they will ensure it happens and doesn't sort of crash everything and that sort of thing.
Brilliant. You said DNS there, so DNS server. So you'll help support people with doing that. Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know what it means. No, basically, if you're sending messages that appear to come from you but aren't, there are some important settings that you get your email people to do just to authenticate us as a sender on your behalf. And I think that's probably something true of a lot of systems. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Mark's put SPF records, but anyway, whatever. That we could deal with that challenge if that was a challenge, couldn't we? And then some of the systems that we've looked at, they have an inbox, so all the emails go into an inbox, and then those emails get allocated to the specific team member to deal with. Is that the same with Glide, or is that?
Not at the moment. So no, historically, we haven't had a focus at all on inbound email. And I know there's other systems that are very focused around that. Our focus has been much more on originally the workflow, then the sort of outbound alerts. Have an interest in exploring that in the future, but no current functionality around inbound email.
Okay, brilliant, Ben. So just so for clarity, so the system could send an email to one of my customers from me. And then if that customer replies to it, it comes into my Outlook inbox if that's what I normally use. Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you.
Absolutely. It does, yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is the scheduler. It's sort of, just from looking at it, pretty obvious what it does, and works for some practices where there is a process of setting aside a specific block of time or a booking to complete client work. If you have the luxury, you can just attack jobs in any order you like and change it, and perhaps just as long as they're done by that target date, you probably wouldn't want to use this. Another bit of functionality we have, and from reading sort of Simon's material, I concluded this may not be hugely relevant today, but we do have a full timesheet, work in progress, billing solution as well. So if that is something you do, Glide can do that in a quite a comprehensive fashion, to be fair. And that's fully integrated, as Glide is, but it gets more interesting with the invoices, fully integrated with Xero. And we're sort of partly through building a Sage integration that will mirror what we've done with Xero as well. So yeah, but I didn't think I'd go through that in detail today as we had the sort of 30-45 minutes. Oh, the final thing I do want to mention, if we've got maybe sort of final 4 minutes, is fee info. So fee info is not something you need to be using our timesheet and billing for. It's about the data side of billing. I'm actually going to go to my client that I know has got some data in it. So we saw that a lot of our customers were creating a custom client field called annual fees. How much is this client worth to me annually? And that was working fine, but fee info is our sort of structured, proper way of doing this. I've got loads and loads of options on here, and I thought I had some data for Cairngorm, but clearly I don't. Anyway, this allows you to build up a database of your fee arrangements, and you enter the bill amount. So maybe this will be £2,000, and you enter the bill frequency, and you give just a start date, a reference date for the first bill. So this might be your literal monthly recurring bills, or it might be more vaguely, this client's expected to be about £2,000 a year. Because this is done in a very structured way, we then have a lot of ways to give you good reporting on this. So as an example, the fees report can project expected billing for any date range, filtered by workflow or by any client roles. And if you are bringing your actual invoices into Glide, it can do a comparison, so you can use it to make sure you've been raising all the bills you expect. The bill data also filters into our sort of report writer. There's lots of standard reports, and I'll look at a couple of those in a moment, but this is your pure sort of, I want to write my own reports. And in here you have every data point we've seen in Glider, what systems are active, etc. And crucially, we have the fee info. So you could say, show me the total annualized fees for this client, or the tax return per bill fee, tax return annualized fees. So, and you can add rules or groups of rules. So you might here say, show me all my clients with these 3 services active, but not these 2, where the annualized fees are between £2,000 and £4,000 in a PE sort of postcode range. Just to move backwards to the sort of more ready to go reports, on the dashboard, where's it gone? On the dashboard, whenever you have a client name, it will take you to the client card, job reference take you to the job card, the numbers take you to a report and write that report for you, and tends to serve as a jump page to get either to the client card or the job card. But you can also come in here and filter this however you like, save reports from it. And of course, any job fields you add are available in here as well. Then we've got some specific purpose reports. The popular one tends to be a turnaround report. So this is where you can say, right, okay, my demo account never gives up any answers here, but how long on VAT returns does it take us to get from books received to sent to clients? And whatever job positions you've got, you can show them, and you can analyze by one job position at a time. So we're putting in a date range here to say, show me jobs that got to that 2-stage, jobs I sent to the client in this date range, how long on average they take. Now in my demo system, it's always 0 days because I just sit here and click through, but you see every job, how many days it took, and then I've chosen to analyze by manager. So this is showing me the job count for each manager and the average number of days. And we can filter down there just to show that manager's jobs. Okay. Oh yeah, I wanted to just mention a bit about our, I think I'm on my last minute here, so very quickly, our onboarding process. So I think it's fair to say with Glide, there's so much you can do to configure the system. We're not promoting this as start at 11 a.m. this morning and everything will be ready by midday. You could go down that route, but you're far better off taking the opportunity to examine your processes, document them, reflect that in Glide. And we can be very helpful with that. So if you're doing it yourself, if you have the time to do it yourself, you are fully supported by Glide. Even if you're a trial or a paid subscriber. Our blue widget in the bottom right corner is the ticket system. We've got UK-based phone support, and we're keen to get you up and running. So we do webinars like this, one-on-one webinars. We also have options where if you don't want to do it, we can do it for you, which we charge separately for. Of course, you have to do the thinking about the processes bit, but we can do the glide configuration. So I think just monitoring all our feedback, the support is something we've put a huge amount of resource into. And of course, we want your workflows to be set up perfectly and working for you to create a longer term relationship or partnership. I'm just glancing at I think I've sort of got to the end there. So I'm just glancing on the other screen at the questions that come in advance to see if I've sort of answered them.
Perfect. So just before we get onto those questions, Ben, what's the next step? So for people that are interested in finding out more, perhaps having a specific demo for their practice, what's the next step for people to get to move on with Glide?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next step I would recommend personally is to book a demonstration, where I guess I'll just do what I've done here, but that's how we typically start things with most practices that use Glide. So I think Mark's got a link to the demonstration booking page on my Calendly page.
Yeah, it's just been put in the chat box.
I did a special, and that last link I sent you, Mark, was a special one for this event, based around the idea that sat here on the 10th of March, we would do a sort of special thing whereby we'll get your personal tax workflow up and running before the 5th of April, no matter how long it takes us. Maybe I'll regret that, I don't know. But that's one link that Mark's got there. That's my recommended approach. I do, as I said before, I don't want to pretend you just go away and this is all your problems are solved in an hour. Glide's a system that gives you options. You will need to put aside a bit of time to configure that either with or without our help. So yeah, first step for me is to book a demo. You can also just create a trial system, which of course everyone offers. And I think maybe Mark might be able to share the sort of create a trial system link as well, or obviously it's prominently placed on our website as well. So yeah, some people prefer to have a play around, or just get straight on with a demo, sort of personal preference there. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So in the chat box, there's 4 links. There's one to the Glide website, one to set up a personal demo, one to create a trial system, and then a special offer that Ben has kindly shared with the community today. So they just go to any one of those that you want to and pursue the workflow, if that's the right phrase, the workflow you would like in order to go to the next step. So next question then, Ben, is pricing. How does the pricing work? Is it per user price, per 1,000 clients? Is it a standard price? How does it work?
Right. So Glide is priced on a per user basis. That is the only metric we use to differentiate the pricing from one practice to the next. And the price includes everything. The only thing that's separate is our Glide time and fees. So we find that maybe about half of our user base use that. So we do split it out. So if it's irrelevant, you're not a timesheet practice, obviously you don't need to pay for that bit. So yeah, purely based on the number of users in your team, or I suppose the number that you want to use Glide. Okay,
thank you. And where would we find those prices as part of the process?
So you just go onto I'm just going to
onto the website and it's all there, is it?
Remind myself of where it is. But basically, if you go to www.whatsglide.com, which I think Mark has shared, you will see the pricing on the top menu bar there. And you can sort of work out the specific price based on the number of users on that web page.
Excellent, thank you. And then just flicking down the questions that have been asked before the meeting. So if anybody else has got any other questions, you want to pop them in the Q&A box now. Just flipping down the questions. I think the majority of them we have covered off. There's one question in there around impartial client satisfaction surveys. And given, and this is for Tim, given what you've shared about the automated emails, mentally, I'm just sticking a URL to a piece of survey software in one of those automated emails. Is it as simple as that?
Well, there's 2 ways of doing it. And we don't have survey functionality, but of course we have worked with customers who do. Now, your 2 options are either to send the email with that link in, and of course links can either be fixed, which I think this one would, or sort of dynamic. So if you needed to link to a sort of portal or whatever it could be. Or actually another workflow action is to trigger a webhook, which is perhaps sort of slightly higher up the technical scale. But for example, programs like Zapier, Microsoft Power Automate, they'll all have the ability to create zaps or tasks that are triggered by a webhook. So you go in to create one and say, I want a task or a zap that is triggered by webhook. They'll give you a unique URL that lives within your sort of data area. And in Glide, you can have, actually, we have loads of webhook triggers like create clients, change client status, everything can trigger a webhook. But the useful one is the clicking the blue button can trigger a workflow action. So you could actually trigger an event in a customer feedback piece of software that might send an email, which might be more better than sort of having the Glide email. I don't know. I suppose it's, I mentioned that because we have a customer that does exactly that, sort of triggers a webhook. Yeah.
Brilliant. So lots of options depending on what you want to do.
Yeah, just remembering they did the webhook because then the other bit of software regulates not sending them too often. Basically.
All right. Okay.
That was the key difference. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And we share the main difference. Amending the workflows we've done. That one's for me. And then predominantly, what's the one piece of advice you would give when designing automation for the practice? That was from Becky.
Right. Yeah. The main bit of advice, and I suppose reference there to automation is probably in terms of Glide is talking about automating the emails, target dates, etc. The one bit of advice, I think my main bit of advice for Glide is use it big picture milestones. Keep it as simple as you possibly can. Don't go mad with it. I mean, you can do, but try and keep this simple. For the automation, I think just be focused on the process as it should unfold. Not sort of like, don't think deadline and how soon before the deadline do we need to remind people. Think, when does it start? When should this start? How are we going to remind our people to do it? What steps will help the customer be ready? And yeah, I think that's, keep it simple. This is supposed to be a really simple system, and there's a lot of complexity we deal with in practice, but hopefully sort of like when should things happen should be the sort of easy part of thinking about it. You also mentioned down there, I saw another question somewhere.
Yeah, just while you read that, Ben, just to make sure you've covered off. For me, what most people try and do when they implement practice management software or any process software is that they try and design a perfect system on day one. So we've got these systems that have worked, but they're all a bit clunky and they don't really like them. So they have this grand picture of this big perfect system. Whereas in my world, what you should do is just record what you've got. Yeah. So that's your starting point. Record what you've got. And then it's a never ending process of continuing improvement. So we've been using a piece of practice management software since the late 1990s. And there's hardly a month go by where a stage is not added or a days has changed or an allocation's moved or something is added to the system in order to make it as close to perfect as possible, but it's never going to be perfect. So if you're watching and thinking about doing it, then my advice is to do it, get on with it, and keep refining it. Yeah,
definitely. The other thing I was going to touch on here, the question, how do you get clients to respond more quickly? We don't have a magic wand, but we have one recommendation here, which is actually that the SMS, the text message, is becoming, in my opinion, a useful tool here because it's an uncrowded space. So it's the same system we looked at with the emails. Of course, you've got to keep them a bit sort of snappier, but you can do all your merging and everything. And for me, if I get an SMS nowadays, it's either from a mum or it's things like your dentist appointments. A lot of service providers are using it because they know the reality, for the best will in the world, some people will not be in control of their email inbox. So actually for the people that aren't, they're probably the people that aren't responding. So ping them a text and that's maybe going to do the job.
So just expand on how that works then, Ben. Do you have to have an SMS provider? Do you connect it to your mobile phone?
We use an integration with a UK-based company called Clockwork SMS for our deliverability. So actually, I should mention, they cost 5p. They cost us 5p and we pass that on via an SMS sort of balance. The mechanism is exactly what we saw with the emails. Except for you need to be a bit more disciplined with the length of the message, but you can merge in everything just like before. The way that you find your recipients is exactly the same, the tagging structure. You get with SMS, the from is an 11 character field. That's how SMS works. You can put a name in there and it will pop up that it's from Ben, or you can put a mobile number in. And if you put a mobile number in and they reply, it will come to the phone. It's a bizarrely, SMS is so insecure. I could send text from your phone, basically, Simon. But luckily no one does, and it works nicely. So yeah, putting in a phone number is a good one. Then if they hit reply, you do get the reply.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you, Ben. Very enlightening for me. And as I said, it's one of the most sophisticated systems that we've looked at, and one of the most customizable as well. So it's been a really fascinating conversation. So just to finish off and say thank you very much to everybody that's come along from the community. Thank you as always to everybody that's asked questions on the way through. And of course, thank you very much, Ben, for coming along and sharing what is quite clearly a passion and the love of your life, for want of a better phrase, and wanting to help us keep control and have a complete visualization of what's going on with our practice. So thank you very much, and I will see you all again shortly. Cheers, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching this video with Ben from Glide, who's shown us how we can get a complete visualization of the tasks that are going on within our accountancy practice. Please feel free to comment or ask any questions below the video. Please hit the old thumbs up in order to show that you like the video, and please subscribe to the channel so you get notified of any future videos. On the screen now, down here somewhere, you should be able to see our next recommended videos for you to watch to inspire, challenge, and support you to run a better accountancy practice.